for many traditional Catholics, devout Catholics, maybe you can say conservative Catholics, maybe converts or reverts to the faith, the allure of Eastern Orthodoxy is continually becoming more and more seductive for a lot of people. And for what I'm seeing in their church and their organization, it seems like they kind of know this and they're straight up just kind of poaching for converts, which I don't blame them doing. I've had people on my own channel just giving comments, and this is a small channel, just saying, now is the time to convert to Orthodoxy, solve all your problems. And I'm seeing this across YouTube in general, just across Catholic media, you could say, where this is a topic that continually keeps coming up. So I've been wanting to talk about this for some time, and I want to cover this in a way that I don't think most people cover, and I think it's important. Someone like me, I think, practically kind of needs to hear something like this, so I want to kind of get this off this chest. Because I'll be honest, I've listened to some of the Eastern Orthodox arguments, and some of them can sound convincing, but inevitably they will all kind of spiral into some deep theological understanding or deep theology that we'd have to kind of get into. And even the pro-Catholic stance that defends Eastern Orthodoxy kind of goes into this. I don't think you have to know a whole lot about deep theology. Not saying it's not important. I think we all should study our history and study our theology to understand, our faith a little better. I think that's important. For me, though, however, like I said, I'm a simple guy, and I know that if I switch to Orthodoxy, it would not make me feel warm and fuzzy inside, because I came to that conclusion knowing that if I converted to Eastern Orthodoxy, aside from the deeper study of theology, really, and all that other stuff, I'd have to throw away a lot of Catholic stuff, and that's the stuff I'll get into. A lot of Catholic baggage that to me makes the Catholic Church the church that Jesus Christ established, just on a surface level that to me just doesn't pass the sniff test of converting to Orthodoxy. So that's what I'll be going into this video. I'll go over my top reasons why I remain a Catholic. This video could go on honestly for like 2 hours. I'll try to make some general categories, but these are the core reasons why I even reverted to the faith, I'd say, and went all into Catholicism. And really the same reason why I can't see myself ever becoming an Orthodox or really any other Christian denomination for that matter, to use that term denomination. Now, I would love to make this a little bit of a discussion. Love to hear your guys' comments if there's something else I missed, and maybe you're Orthodox and you disagree with some of the things I'm saying. I'd be happy to kind of hear that. And again, you don't have to be a theologian, in my opinion, to really make this argument. So this is kind of what I'm going at right now. And if you guys do like this video, please like it and share it. It's always definitely helpful. The first reason I will classify, and these are in no particular order, but some of these do funnel with each other, and I'm going to try and keep this brief because even this section alone could turn into like a whole video, and there are many videos talking about this. But one is just the sheer number of Catholic miracles or miracles attributed to the Catholic faith, from the countless Marian apparitions to the Eucharistic miracles, even the Shroud of Turin that was still essentially under Catholic control, still is under Catholic control, and just my own personal testimony from people that I've heard about in my own life. Obviously, there's tons of stories I've heard on the internet and outside in media as well. And I know the Catholic Church isn't the only one who is privy to miracles from God. I'm not saying that's the case, but there's a sheer number of very large miracles that have been under close scrutiny from scientific investigations. I'd say more so than any other miracle I've heard of. A lot of our miracles are widely known, even outside of other religions. I personally don't know of any Orthodox miracle. I'm sure there are some. I just don't know of any profound miracle that is hit at such a large scale. And actually, I forgot to add this, that the very first miracle story I ever heard came from my own grandmother, who saw the Blessed Mother before she had 2 kids pass away. Before one of her kids passed away, she shared the story with me. And it wasn't a story that she even really wanted to share. I could see that she still had a lot of trauma behind the whole event of her kids dying, but it was not something she openly discussed a lot, but I actually talked to her about a number of occasions when I was a young boy. So I remember her saying that when she saw the Blessed Mother in the middle of the night. So side tangent there. The point is I have a close relationship between some of these stories. And what's also interesting is that the Catholic Church, since its inception, is very careful and is always skeptical about their own miracles. Even people that were even early miracles that had a profound impact in the church, like St. Padre Pio, St. Faustina, the Catholic Church is always very careful and oftentimes is, like I said, is trying to refute their own miracles. You would think if the Catholic Church is trying to make a lot of converts just to make this up, they would just be giving stamp of approvals everywhere, or they could make something up that would be really profound and just put a stamp of approval on it. But they really don't do that. Even something, again, Fatima is obviously another huge one as well. So that's one big area that I just want to make this kind of general, but that would be huge. I'd have to throw away all these apparitions and miracles, which I will say, I am skeptical a little bit. I forgot to add this too. I'm very skeptical about people that are out there saying like they have mystical experiences. I think there's kind of too much of that on the internet in general, but I know, not saying it doesn't happen. The point is I'm skeptical of some. Those of you guys that watch the channel know I can be skeptical of a couple Catholic miracles. I digress, but what this kind of leads me into the next part, that the fruits of these miracles, and I hate using the word kind of fruits, but products of these miracles, produced many powerful saints and martyrs throughout the century. So the next section is just, if I converted to Eastern Orthodoxy, I'd have to throw away a lot of saints, a lot of martyrs that gave their life for their faith, and also not just gave their life for the faith, but the stuff that they did in their lives that brought people to Jesus Christ. So I know that we share similar saints, pre-schism, prior to 1054, we got a lot of saints we share in common with Orthodoxy, but I had to throw away a lot of powerhouse saints post-schism, and there are many, and there's many things. When you read the stories of the saints, that alone is pretty unbelievable. Saints like Saint Dominic, Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint Pio again, Saint Maximilian Kolbe, even Saint Jacinta through here and there is one of the children of Fatima. She's got a great story. I could talk about that. She's the one of the children's face, so I feature on my channel's avatar on YouTube here, or I could say the patron saint of this channel. Saint Teresa of Lisieux, Saint Thomas Aquinas, to name a few. So denying the Catholic Church, I could go on a tangent here, but I'm just saying that this would be something that if I converted, this would be nagging at my head a lot, that I'd be, again, denying a lot of these saints and the stuff that was attributed to them. And if this is a key thing here, if I'm going to deny them and be skeptical of them, what saints and what miracles of just the two areas we talked about so far am I going to accept in the Orthodox faith? So that's a big leap in my opinion. If I'm going to throw away all this, evidence or all this support to take on, I'm sure, learn about other saints and other miracles in the Orthodox faith, that's a big leap, because I got a big powerhouse number, big sheer number in the Catholic camp for myself. The next one, the third area, is just the overall fruits of Catholicism. This, again, could be a video that goes on forever, and many people have talked about this. And I hate using the word fruits, but just the products of what Catholicism has spread globally and throughout all civilizations and just our culture, whether we want to admit it or not, many people aren't even aware of this. In fact, I always think it's funny where Protestants will say Catholics have this pagan culture and this pagan influence when they're adopting a lot of the stuff that the Catholic Church essentially founded. They don't realize that they're calling them pagan, yet some of these things have been, the Catholic Church has depaganized and the Protestants have adopted. So I digress. But I can already see the atheists, the Protestants, maybe the Orthodox kind of laughing under their breath as I say this, because it's popular, and it was always popular since the church's inception to poke fun and say, really highlight the negatives in the Catholic Church. So obviously, yes, there's been abuse scandals, many scandals in the Catholic Church, but if you really look at it, there's been studies looking at this specifically in the abuse scandals. This is not unique just to the Catholic Church. This is a problem you find in any organized society or any organized organization where there's going to be, power and figureheads and stuff like that. And I would just say this is where you're going to find, Satan creep its way into the church. But with that aside, and I'll come back to this later. If you look at what the Catholic Church has done as a culture, that if you look at popular secular society, they like to kind of demonize a little bit and like to paint the history of the Catholic Church as authoritarian, just trying to control the populace, when really they ignore that we essentially made the university system. We essentially, even though they say we were anti-science, we essentially built the scientific method. We're very pro-evangelization across the world, spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ, if you're a Christian in general, and support that. Hospitals, orphanages, all this attributed to the Catholic faith, that when you compare this, just going back to Orthodoxy here, compared to the Catholics, it's which also supports the level of having a central level of organization, but you don't nearly see this as much in the Orthodoxy, even post-schism. You could say pre-schism, they were a part of this, but even post-schism, we did a lot of these things after this period of time. That is, again, you'd be throwing a lot of that away to admit that the Church of Jesus Christ should supply a great good in the world, and I think it did. And going back to that point of the church being under attack, this also further supports that my belief in the Catholic faith, that if you read things about black masses, just satanic cults and stuff like that. Writings we can see almost inevitably, time and time again, they're always attacking the Catholic Church. Even since going years back, decades back, centuries back, stealing the Blessed Sacrament, using it for satanic black masses. Still to this day, we find that the Blessed Sacrament has to be under lock and key, and sometimes under camera surveillance, because people break in and try to steal the Blessed Sacrament. And in extreme cases, we know this has always been the case, to infiltrate the Catholic Church. We see clear-cut writings in Freemasonry. This is always a plan. And it kind of makes sense if you want to just not look at it as we can say, why do they do this? Some people would argue, well, that's not a proof for like satanic religion. It's proof just that they're trying to attack the largest oppressive, quote-unquote, religion, so they're trying to take it down, like in the French Revolution. Which, ironically, again, makes me believe more in the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church throughout society has always been against big authoritarian, Marxist, control or satanic ideology of do what thou wilt, or more individualist, independent ideology versus a God-centered, moral-centered philosophy. So I know the Orthodox, we support this, but the Catholic Church has been on the defensive against this and fighting against it, again, even post-schism, much to a greater degree, in my opinion. And I almost made a separate section about this, but this relates hand in hand, so this might be the longest section here. When you see the Catholic faith lived out to the fullest across cultures, because you could argue now, and I'll say this later, that a lot of Catholics are not living this out, but when it is lived out and it has a high place in society and culture, like it did even in the early 20th century, Catholic Church, not people that know this, had control over what the media was doing. Certain things could not be released. Certain graphic content or graphic footage had to have a moral standing, had to have like a good versus evil like point to it. If it didn't, it was kind of deemed as not sound for human consumption. Per the Catholic faith, the Catholic faith the Hollywood media outlets had to kind of essentially check everything with the Catholic Review Board, until that kind of fell apart. And then we got, literally in the 50s and 60s, we started getting more raunchy, more extreme type film. But that was because the Catholic Church kind of lost some of its power. People stopped following the tenements of the church. My own family, I'm trying not to digress here, but for my own history, what I'm seeing even in traditional communities, but even with my own family, going back to my grandparents, how my parents were raised, when you see a family lived out in the Catholic faith, it's trying not to digress here, but no question, hands down, you produce an individual that is very faithful, has a high level of moral virtue, not going to be perfect, but still, to what we're seeing now, when that degrades, it goes off to the wayside. We see a more selfish society and one that is more anti-life. The next point would be a global church. I'm not saying the Catholic Church is perfect, but if we look at, I applaud the Orthodox's traditional stances, but this no doubt has caused issues in spreading their faith. I'll link an article down below that discusses the fact that even after the schism, the Orthodox faith really struggled to impact across the world, not only in evangelization, but this also affected their declining numbers. So yes, the Catholic Church has had declining numbers in recent years, but this has been the case for pretty much every religion. And so if you are the biggest religion in the world, it makes sense you're going to have one of the greatest declines. But the difference is that this was happening earlier in the Orthodox Church post-schism. So I'm digressing a bit here, but this is one of the luxuries of having a central organization, or you could say a central authority like the papacy, structured like the Catholic Church does, because you're less likely to have this occur. And again, looking at it from a global church perspective, what organization or denomination or Christian denomination really spread the gospel of Jesus Christ across the world? Hands down, when you compare not just Catholics to Protestants, but even Catholics to Orthodoxy, it's inevitably going to be the Catholic Church, even post-schism. Now, this varies in certain territories and countries, but again, you're more likely to find an accessible Catholic Church than you are an Orthodox church than any denomination. The point is, I'm more likely to believe that the Catholic Church is the church Jesus Christ established if I'm more likely to see more of those particular churches across the world. I mean, that to me is a glaring thing right in my face that I'd be struggling with if I was an Orthodox. And I'll play devil's advocate here and just say, just because a culture might be, let's say in the future, the Catholic Church is lower, but the Mormon Church also surpasses all Christian, I won't say Christian, but surpasses other denominations of religion. Does that necessarily mean it's the right one? Maybe not necessarily, no, but when you look at the totality of the church and what it has spread up to this point, to me, it's still kind of clear to me that the Catholic Church has done more good and brought more moral virtue to the world than anything else. The next area I'm going to look at is just the core teachings. So if we're to the core philosophies of the Catholic faith, when I compare the two together, this is another reason why I could really not become Orthodoxy. And some of this does relate, I guess, to the papacy a little bit, but I really just struggle overall with the Orthodox's lack of structure. Yes, their liturgy is great. It's very devout. It's reverent. They stick to a lot of, in general, a lot of traditional Christian values, traditional Catholic values as well in the early church. And they could argue, yeah, look at the modern, quote unquote, modern Catholic Church and what the liturgy has kind of evolved into. And you have these modernist churches, maybe some modernist priests and bishops. That all might be true. And yes, you guys might be holding some steadfast traditional values, but on paper, who is upholding the sanctity of marriage, pro-life values? Those are two big things. No question, it's the Catholic faith still has it. So you could argue, well, at least, we're not practicing what we're preaching. To me, I like that it's still on paper. I don't like the idea that there's this kind of up in the air idea of orthodoxy when it comes to these values. Some see this as a plus as becoming Orthodox because you can kind of have the best of both worlds. And their stance becomes kind of all over the place. I'm well aware that a majority of the Catholic faith have all but ignored a lot of these core teachings, such as specifically the sanctity of marriage and being pro-life, or they're just completely ignorant of the basic Catholic teaching. But still, the teaching still stands. This hypocrisy by the laity isn't unique, though, of Catholicism. You find this across all religions, and I'm sure you find this in Orthodoxy. In fact, I have heard you find this in Orthodoxy as well. So just regardless, despite all the modern criticism of Orthodoxy, we are still holding the line, so to speak, on the pro-life message. There's no questions. We're still like the main core religion that has not faltered and fell away from this. Contraception, again, almost all religions have kind of fallen away from this. They're taking a lackadaisical kind of stance on this. And just the pure sanctity of marriage, where in the Orthodox Church, you get this kind of 3-strike rule. To me, this is a big deal because those are 3 areas that I feel are pretty strong areas that, from a philosophical standpoint, to me makes sense, and makes sense not to kind of vary on that. Doesn't mean we're going to be perfect on it, but they're important, I think, to recognize that those 3 issues we kind of always have to uphold, and I like that it's still on paper. If I converted to Orthodox because of something like the bishops or the Pope said was heretical, but I still could live with a church that allows this three strike rule, that would really bother me. And to me, I know I'm going to get some eye rolls here from Orthodox individuals if you're watching, but this to me is just really ultimately a slippery road to basically just being a Protestant. I understand you'll get upset with this, but when it comes to contraception, abortion, remarriage, and other teachings, core teachings, you get this answer in Orthodoxy. If you were to ask this in the Orthodox realm, because I've looked into this for a little bit, you get this response that basically is very vague. They'll say things, well, it kind of depends on your bishop, your relationship with your spouse, your priest, and maybe just have a discussion on that. And that sounds really nice, but personally, I just don't like that. I like things kind of black and white. Because if there's not a black and white stance, then I get to freely, essentially, just pick and choose what I want. I mean, how is it really any different than being a Protestant? And I understand, don't get me wrong, that's the whole stereotypical cafeteria Catholic, and a lot of Catholics are doing that anyways. Again, I don't know if it's out of ignorance or they're being just straight up heretics, formal heretics, but I don't like that vagueness. So to me, I'd have a problem with that. I like having, as much, like I said, as much as the Pope says certain things, or the bishops are doing certain things, at least I have my catechism knowing that, they're doing something else. But if I follow, this is the core tenets of the faith that I really uphold in, and I believe that if you follow this, you will have a better life, better society if I follow these things. Personally, I've just seen that in my own life, that if I get to this point where, well, it kind of depends, you can kind of be flexible with it, then I'm really not going to uphold those rules because I have a lot of leeway. And I understand that people say, well, doesn't mean you have to kind of go along with it. I don't like that. It just doesn't, it's not clear cut for me. That would just ultimately bother me. Here, it bears repeating that you hear of a lot of reverts that, or I should say, they convert to Orthodoxy, then they revert back to Catholicism, and they say, I've had these same issues. You think it's going to be like, sunshine and rainbows on the Orthodox side, where people aren't saying things that are heretical or modernist, and you still see that. So you're not really going to escape that. Ultimately, I feel like what you're trading a lot of stuff, a lot of core great Catholic teachings, a lot of stuff I've already addressed in this video, literally for the idea of rejecting the papacy and having a better liturgy. That to me is what people are trading it in for. I could get into many other core teachings, but two big ones are, I believe in purgatory and the Immaculate Conception. So those would be two things as well that I think are would impact me personally. And this leads me to my final point, is that I really believe that the Catholic Church calls you to a higher standard. And I know, again, our Orthodox individuals will not like hearing that. And this kind of relates to purgatory as well when I get into this. But the Catholic Church, if done correctly, is a harder road. But in my opinion, it's a more fulfilling road if properly lived out. Now, I know the Orthodox Church will consider a lot of us modern day Catholics as kind of lightweight. We don't have nearly as much fasting. But you're comparing this to a lot of just lukewarm, bare minimum Catholics. The Catholics that are living out the faith, really, like I said, to its fullest, having those hard stances I even just listed above. Like I said, even just the sanctity of marriage, contraception as being a hard no, the idea of accepting the dogma of purgatory in general, it really starts inviting the need and inviting the whole notion about daily reparations and mortification. So much of Catholic traditional teachings that you get into, I'm not saying the upper levels of Catholicism, but the more you learn about the faith, you learn about really there's a lot of kind of expected of you the more you keep learning and developing your faith. So hopefully this was educational to some of you guys. And there was a lot more I actually even wanted to get into. There was a bunch of honorable mentions I wanted to list, but this video is already going on a lot longer than I anticipated. Ultimately, what I'm saying is there's too much great stuff in the Catholic faith to really give up for the Orthodox religion. Granted, I will say, I haven't spent a whole lot of time in the Orthodox religion. I know there's a lot of other, deep theology that I'm sure produces a lot of great things in someone's life, and it's some great stuff to kind of know about, basically. But the stuff I already listed so far in the Catholic Church is just so substantial, so rich in my own life. And again, I like the fact the Catholic Church has these definable dogmas. I like having an establishable order and hierarchy, even if it means, unfortunately, the time we're living in, the vast majority are not practicing this. Doesn't mean to give up hope. This is a time where Catholics as a whole need to buckle down, practice the faith, evangelize the faith, and just live in your own little world, in your own little life. Make it how you want to make it, and not conform to the societal pressures and societal expectations of what a modern day Catholic, quote unquote, should be. So hopefully you guys got something out of this. Definitely please comment down below for anything you guys have, and I'll see you guys in the next one.